So today I'm joined by two Encore experts who have worked with GP customers every day and for most of their career, I think. So I have Tracy Santos, the account management practice lead, as well as Jim Slynn, an account manager at Encore. And I'm really excited to get into things today with you both.
Awesome.
Maybe
Thanks,
a
Katie.
Thank you.
little introduction from you both just to kick things off.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day to everybody. I'm Tracy, and I'm sure that you've attended some of Jim and I's other webinars that we've done over the years, so we're not strangers to you, but super excited to be with you guys here today.
And same with myself. I'm an account manager here at Encore Business Solutions. I've been working with them for about 15 years and primarily working with GP clients and now Business Central, moving them to the cloud.
Okay, awesome. So before we get into the main discussion today, I wanted to start off by asking the audience the question of kind of what's the main reason for attending today? What's the main reason that you haven't made the move yet? Kind of what's holding you back? So I'll pop that poll onto the screen there and give everyone a couple seconds and minutes to take a look at that and submit your answers. Okay, so the main reason being timing and resourcing, actually. And then just after that is fear of disruption or change. I know we'll cover both of those today, along with the ROI and financial justification, upfront cost concerns, and just not knowing where to start, which is the ROI and cost concerns. That's kind of the first question we'll get in today. So you're not alone on any of these. And to kick things off, let's kind of get started on what the foundation is for most business cases, cost. I think that's what everybody is most concerned about, but more specifically talking a little bit more about, the costs that aren't always factored in. So Jim, I'll get started with you. From what are you seeing with your GP customers today? Some things that are more commonly overlooked, or maybe they're not considering into the full cost of staying on GP.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Well, first of all, moving to the cloud, to any cloud-based software is really a strategic shift for your business. And it opens up a ton of modern functionality for your company, whether it's automation, adopting AI, or even better integrations between systems. Improving functionality really should be the main driver for your business. It helps you improve efficiencies, be more effective at your job, and just make your IT environment more secure. And those are the types of things that really should be driving your migration and your business case. But, if you're a leader at your organization and you're trying to build a business case for migrating from GP, your on-premise GP system, to Business Central in the cloud, it's usually going to start with an ROI forecast, to ensure that the project makes financial sense first. And before our clients invest in new technology, they need to sell this to their CFOs and their CEOs and the boards. And they really want to know what that return on investment to make sure it's a positive project. And while it's pretty easy to calculate the cost of running a cloud-based system like Business Central, it's when you move to Business Central, it's really just subscription fees. It's much more difficult to calculate the cost of running an on-premise system like GP, because there's just so many different costs that go into it. For example, my clients know how much they're paying in annual maintenance fees in GP each year. That's one of the costs that they never miss. They always know that. That's really easy. But they need to think bigger. There's lots of costs that are just easy to overlook. For example, to run GP in your business, you need servers. Either you have physical servers that need to constantly be maintained and replaced every 4 or 5 years, or you've moved those servers to the cloud already for a monthly subscription fee. In either case, those costs aren't cheap, and you need to be included in the ROI calculations. And then to run those servers, you need software. You need SQL licensing, Windows licensing, remote desktop. These are all costs that, they get bigger year after year. Microsoft charges more year after year for these, but they're also easily forgotten because you only purchase them periodically. So you need to remember to go back, get those invoices, and add those costs into your ROI as well. And then, of course, you have IT managed services. You own the servers, so someone you pay has to manage those servers as well as the rest of your network. And those costs, they're often taken for granted because you're just used to paying for them. These costs are significant though. And so when you move to the cloud, they can completely go away and they need to be part of your ROI calculations. Those are some of the easy ones. But there's others, like think of even something simple as power, cooling, the cost to do backups. It used to be that our customers ran a whole host of on-premise systems. And when they added GP to the mix, it was actually quite easy. They already had a server room. So adding GP was just a small expense. But now GP is usually the last on-premise system that they have on their environment. I see this all the time. They want to get rid of their server room, and this is the last system that they have in their server room. Servers use a lot of electricity, and they need to be in a controlled environment. And those kind of hidden costs, they add up. Think about it. When you get rid of all of your on-premise systems, you can basically convert your server room to a storage room, and that will save you a ton of money. And then backups, you have to run your backups regularly. You have to, you should keep them off site. They should be tested. This sometimes includes buying specific devices that you have to purchase. So, you'll buy devices to help you run your backups or subscriptions to automate the backup processes. And just because these processes are automated, it doesn't mean they're free. So you need to figure out what those are costing you, factor those into the equation, because you don't need to do that when you move to Business Central. Backups are included as part of your licensing fees. Those costs just go away. So those are some of the hidden costs of just continuing to run an on-premise system like GP.
Those are all great points, Jim. I was thinking more when you're talking about like services, like we have internal resources that have to work on the server environments, as well as there could be external ones, but also too thinking about upgrade costs. They've got to make sure they factor those in as well.
Yeah, upgrade costs are actually really big costs. Microsoft wants you to upgrade GP every year. We work with a lot of clients that migrate and upgrade GP every other year, and some are a little bit longer than that. But whatever your time frame is for doing upgrades, they need to be done on a regular schedule. And these upgrades are complicated projects because we're working with important data, and sometimes our clients are using a lot of ISVs, third-party products, or customizations. So the services to perform these upgrades, they can be quite a bit, and you have to do them regularly. So these are not costs that you're hitting year after year, but you need to go back and figure out what have you actually paid for doing these upgrades, and you realize that when you go to Business Central, these don't have to be done anymore at all. It's a cloud-based system with no upgrade requirements pretty much at all. You get new versions automatically. So go back and figure this out, and then push those upgrade costs into your ROI calculations as well. And then, one of the other things is when our clients do these upgrades is they forget that we actually have to shut down their GP system completely for a day or two. So this kind of disruption to your business also has a business cost to it. So, we're shutting down your financial team for 1 or 2 days every year, every 2 years. And what does that cost your system or your company kind of in lost productivity, things like that. So, these are things that, don't have to be done when you're on a cloud-based system, but they're part of on-premise life. And you need to kind of include those as well. These costs are kind of already spread, like all these costs that I've just talked about. They're easy to underestimate because they're spread across different budgets, different years. Some are IT department budgets, some are finance department budgets, some are just general admin budgets like electricity, but they all add up, and they add up to some big numbers. And if you're building a business case and you are looking at the financial return and you take these costs into account, I think you're going to find that moving to the cloud makes good financial sense every time. It really does.
With that, the idea that they just go away with Business Central and kind of taking that into consideration, that's the things that you don't think about every day when you're comparing the cost of GP to what's Business Central going to cost. I think it's a much, much bigger cost consideration
Your
than just
life becomes
visibility
so
case
much
calls.
easier when you move to a subscription based environment.
Beyond cost, there's a piece of the business case that I don't think gets enough attention really until it becomes urgent, and it's an all hands on deck problem, which is risk. And they often stay in the background, until you, like I said, until something happens, which shouldn't be the case. And Tracy, you talked about this in your last session, and just the exposure that we have in today's security environment with being on GP and just the risks associated with that. So when organizations are building a business case to move off GP, how should they think about risk and security, and why does it belong in this conversation?
Awesome, thanks, Katie. On-prem environments carry ongoing security and compliance risk, as they often are not updated due to constraints of the application that they support. We talked about that last time. It's like, okay, great. It causes disruption, there's a cost consideration, and maybe we don't apply all the updates to our environment. And I'm talking about beyond GP, the server environments and all the applications that are required to run that server. Maybe we overlook that, and so that adds to the risk. Real, I can't even say that word, it's a tongue twister, real world impacts. So for example, cyber incidents, they cost millions, extended downtime and operational paralysis when you have a cyber attack. In extreme cases, businesses never fully recover. And people will say, well, great, we'll have a managed service that will eliminate risk. Well, that's not true. You still are vulnerable. With Business Central, the security responsibility shifts to Microsoft, and many security related costs disappear. Jim's got some great examples that he's had to go through in the last 12 to 18 months of clients that have been had a cyber incident. Jim,
Yeah,
can you go
those are
ahead?
really, really disruptive events that happen to my clients. And I've had it to happen to several clients over the last few years. So don't think the cyber attacks won't happen to you, because they really could. And your on-premise systems are the most difficult to be able to reconstruct. And they're the most susceptible. Microsoft really is good at helping to prevent these incidents from happening. But when they do happen, recovering from them is much easier as well. So I find that,
Absolutely.
to be quite honest, my on-prem clients have all of the cyber incidents that have happened to my clients, ransomware, have been with on-prem clients. None of my cloud clients have actually been affected in the last year. But I've had a few on-prem clients be affected, and shutting down their business for probably 3 weeks while they recover their servers and try to rebuild their systems and make sure that they whatever has infiltrated their systems isn't going to be replicated in their system when they reconstruct it, is a lot of work. It's very expensive to their business. And to be quite honest, fortunately, one of my clients went out of business because of a ransomware attack about a year ago. So these things do happen, for sure.
Absolutely. So when we think about building this business case, and we've talked about various factors so far, this again can be something that people overlook, and you have to consider this. So when we think about this, let's think about risk avoidance is a legitimate financial justification. So again, your decision makers, your CXOs, they want to know that that is something that risk avoidance to them is very important, because we need business continuity. We need to grow as a business. We need to be able to support our employees and support our customers. And again, that risk avoidance is a legitimate financial justification. I mean, look at what is the average cost of a cyber attack? 1 million, 2 million, again, depending on the size of your business, there's a strong business case to protect your future. So it's really important to consider that. It's not, how do you then protect yourself? Again, today, if someone said, great, you're going to start a new business, you wouldn't pick an on-premise solution. Again, cloud allows us to have that sense of security and protection. What about privacy? Jim, you've got a few comments about privacy because obviously that
Yeah.
people want, okay, great, what happens with my environment?
Well, when people talk about security, a lot of times they're talking about data security as well, and sovereignty. Data sovereignty comes into that conversation. And so, what our clients should know is that Microsoft allows you to choose the data center where your Business Central data is stored. Um, Canadian customers tend to want to store their data in a Canadian data center. American customers want to store their data in an American um, data center. The Microsoft allows you to do that. You can uh, host your data on a Canadian data center with very easily with Business Central, and therefore you know that your data is data sovereignty is intact. So data privacy, Microsoft has helped us solve that problem, but it has been a real issue for some of our clients.
Awesome, thanks, Jim.
And you said, I think it was in your security session, Tracy, it's not if, it's when. With being on GP, and that stuck with me last time. So it's true. I think like it's not a question about it won't happen to us because it can happen to anybody.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's right. And you know what, Katie? Doing nothing really isn't an option for our clients. Like I went back and took a look, and Microsoft announced in February 2014, so it was basically 12 years ago. They announced that they were going to be a cloud-first company, which meant that GP was going to be replaced because it was an on-prem system. So from that point forward, they basically stopped developing GP. When you think about it, um, GP version 2016 looks and feels a lot like GP 2015, and 2018 looks and feels like 2016. They've kind of kept the system running, but that's really about it. They've made sure it's compatible with the rest of Microsoft's products. It took them about 4 years after they made that announcement to develop Business Central, and they released that in 2018, 2019. And now Business Central's mature, and we're only 3 years away from GP being completely sunsetted. No support by Microsoft. We don't get support from Microsoft when that happens. So there's not really much time to get a migration done before the deadline. I think when you're talking about risk, I think that might be the biggest risk to our clients of all, is that we're running out of time.
Okay, now I want to kind of shift into, let's put everything together, talk about the ROI and the total cost of ownership when you actually start building your business case internally. So kind of, Jim, when doing this, what should they be focusing on for their internal analysis presentation?
Well, typically CFOs aren't going to move to Business Central in the cloud strictly because of features and functionality. As I mentioned before, we're seeing that while new features are super important to the users of the system, CFOs, CEOs, they're risk adverse, and they tend to approve these projects because of things like risk reduction, cost predictability, and return on investment. So it really comes down to a question of, do you want to continue funding an aging, high risk on-premise model, or do you want to move to a predictable, lower risk cloud model that's aligned to your corporate strategies? And when building the business case, I think you need to be thorough with those ROI calculations because I'm confident, like I said before, that if they're done properly, a move to the cloud will always be financially positive. The upfront migration costs, they are painful. It's a significant migration, but the long-term financial savings moving to the cloud subscription model, it just pays off. It stands out over time. And it's important for you to remember that the longer you wait to do these projects, the more you just continue spending on the on-premise model and those costs that I talked about. So the longer it'll take you then to realize the savings that'll compound in like years 2, 3, 4 after the migration, that's when you really will begin to start saving money. But beyond the financials, you need to think about how your business system will improve by moving to a modern system. So start thinking about the efficiency gains, how you implement automation and AI, improved interoperability between systems. Cloud-based systems talk to other cloud-based systems better. improve security. How will that affect your company? These are the kind of strategic benefits of moving to Business Central that are more difficult to quantify, but they're probably the most important. And if you need help in quantifying these things for your business case, we can help you quantify these things for you.
Absolutely, Jim. And instead of many fluctuating costs, CFOs see a single forecastable ERP operating costs.
Yeah.
And we have tools that we use. We have ROI tools and TCO tools that help you go ahead and see this clearly without missing costs or guessing what they are, so that you can present your business case.
Yeah, moving all those costs to your operating to an operating cost, it really is nice. It's a very simple, predictable licensing fee that you can manage on a yearly basis. You're not overly invested in the system as far as licensing goes. If you happen to be a cyclical business, your licenses can go up and down with you, so it's very manageable that way. And the tools we have to help you understand this, we can start with something like a migration assessment, where at no cost, we can talk to you about how will this migration work for you? What does it look like moving from GP to Business Central? What are those benefits and what are the costs that you're going to see? And then from that, we can kind of help you build out that business case.
Okay, this time is going very quickly.
It is.
Okay, before we kind of get on to the next of making the case internally and kind of who we're presenting it to, I'm going to launch another poll here just to get a sense of who needs to be convinced, because it can, like we said, we can help you build that business case through different analysis and tools, but it really, who does the case need to make sense to? So I'm going to put that up on the screen and you can submit your answers there. But it might, and I don't know, Tracy, Jim, is it different? Are you building a different case depending on who you're presenting it to, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you do have different stakeholders in the business, and we want to make sure we're considering all of them. So, for example, we don't want to exclude IT, and we don't want to exclude finance, and we want to make sure that we are addressing all of those people that have influence on the decision.
That's right. Yeah, and department heads might be focused more on how on the functionality and how they can make their departments more efficient. But the executive and ownership, they want to see that it's a good investment and that it matches their strategic, the corporation's strategic goals. And those things are also very important.
Okay, let's end and share results. That should pop up on screen. So yeah, the 40% answer department heads, and then just behind that is finance. Yeah, I think it's all, like you said, it's all alignment and just putting the case together. Okay, we're getting to time. So GP is not going to stop working tomorrow. But Tracy, waiting to move off of GP, like you had mentioned before, Jim, it ends up costing more in the long run. You're still paying to run GP, even if it works fine today. But Tracy, why does it matter? Why is it important to do it now? And what is the urgency with making the case today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, timing and urgency are definitely factors when you're making this business case. GP costs and risks increase every year, while cloud ERP costs and risks stay relatively flat. So waiting doesn't eliminate the decision, it usually compresses it. Let's give leadership enough runway to make a rational, financially sound decision. So that's, again, giving them lots of time. You want to take them through this. Doing nothing is not cost neutral. Remaining on-premise does not freeze costs or risk. Over time, organizations experience rising infrastructure and support costs, increasing cybersecurity exposure, which we mentioned earlier, growing dependency on scarce GP skills, more manual workarounds and inefficiencies, and greater business disruptions when issues do occur. So these costs accumulate quietly across IT, finance, and operation, often without improving business capability. So again, staying on that on-premise solution, again, we just think, hey, we'll just keep going. There's no timing's not important or urgency isn't important, but that's not true. Successful ERP transitions require planning well in advance. Organizations that plan early benefit from more migration options and flexibility, better cost control and phasing, reduced implementation risk, stronger internal alignment, and the ability to time investments to budget cycles. Security and compliance readiness, we talked about that. Many GP environments would not even meet modern standards for security and compliance. So again, this is a business decision, not just an IT project.
Yeah, and our goal isn't really just to push you to move. It's really to help you build the financial case so that leadership can make that informed decision. But let's not forget about that end of support date for Dynamics GP. December 31st, 2029 is going to come quickly, and after that, Microsoft won't support us on GP, and it's going to be very difficult for us to support you on GP. So let's not really delay these migrations. I think now is the time. It's in your best interest to make that move right away.
Absolutely. And if we're helping you build a business case, doesn't mean you're making a decision today. We need to get that business case in front of the decision makers so that you can then plan out that project. You don't want to wait and then say, well, yeah, in 3 months from now, I want to be live on Business Central. Well, we haven't had time to properly plan that. We don't want you to be in that situation.
Yeah, we need to build a roadmap.
All right, so thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I hope that you found this session helpful in where you are today and give you clarity on how to move forwards.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jim.
Jim. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.